Welcome back to Let the Quran Speak. Now we answer common questions about Islam. With me is Brother Shabir Ali. Brother Shabir, the first question is about fate. And the question is, the person is asking, well, it seems like every man's fate has already been written. Is it possible to change your fate by doing good deeds?
The classical conception about this is that God has so decreed everyone's final outcome and written it down that no one can really change that outcome. We can only change what is apparent to us, like it appears to us that a certain person is heading towards hell. But if we give him the right message, we can turn him around, and now it appears to us that he's heading towards heaven. But God
that was
forbid.
in God's plan from the beginning.
Yes, and God forbid, this same person may actually turn back and go towards hell again, because that is really what is finally his destination prescribed by God for him, and we don't know what that destination is. But if we think of it this way, then it becomes difficult to justify the action of God. Like, why would it be justified to put this person in hell? Well, the classical scholars just said, it doesn't matter. God is our creator, and he has the right to create some people for heaven and some people for hell. And a similar answer is given in the New Testament as well, in one of the writings of St. Paul. Said God has the right, like any potter can create some things for good purposes and some for bad purposes. God has that right to create some creatures for heaven and some for hell. But the Quran does stress the justice of the entire creative scheme. And so it must be that God so created human beings such that their final outcome will be not devised by God. And so it is really up to the individual to choose his or her path. In which case, when we talk about the final outcome, there's no sense of changing one's fate, because there's no fate hanging over your head like a sword ready to chop your head off. But it is an open path of possibilities that God has created for his servants, and we can choose either possibility, and our final outcome then will be according to what we have actually chosen. To me, this is what all Muslims actually do believe in their minds and in their hearts, even if some scholars of Islam have written differently. And the reason they have written differently about this is because they were trying to protect the majesty of God from any suggestion that perhaps they thought that if they left matters open to the choice of individuals in that clear manner, then that would mean that individuals are bringing into the universe things of their own choosing without God wanting that to happen.
Which would raise questions about the omnipotence and omniscience of God.
Yes, so they try to preserve his omnipotence and his omniscience by arriving at that conclusion. But I believe we can preserve both, his omnipotence, his omniscience, and also at the same time preserve human freedom, and in which case we show that the whole system is just. God has created people such that their final outcomes are not predetermined, and that these are open possibilities before the human beings, and it will be according to their own choosing.
Okay, Brother Shabir, this next question is from a person asking about the late Ian Stevenson, who studied children who seem to remember past lives. And apparently he studied around 3,000 children. Most of them, they were able to match up with someone who had actually lived before. So the person is asking, how can we view this study Islamically?
Yeah, the criticism of that study actually is that Ian Stevenson conducted this study among children who were in a society where people believed in reincarnation.
Okay.
And it is thought that if he conducted the same study in another part of the world where people did not believe in reincarnation, the results would be vastly different. Now, how is the result affected in this way by the particular area in which he did his studies? He did his studies in India, where the belief in reincarnation is very much a central part of the Hindu belief system. The idea being that in this life you develop a certain character, you acquire karma, and but your supply of good deeds or bad deeds, and then your next life, when you die, you are reborn into something else immediately. You could be another human being, or you could be an animal, and sometimes obviously an animal can become a human being in a further birth. So if when children are born in that situation, naturally the parents and family members begin to suggest that this child is a rebirth of a past dead relative. And when they see the child in this way, if a child is identified by the wider circle in this manner, they will naturally start to treat the child in this way and suggest to the child that you are that person. And of course, the child will over time pick up knowledge through conversation and overhearing others' conversation about the characteristics of that past relative. And when people do see the child exhibiting the same characteristics, which the child is obviously trying to imitate, they will then find this as confirmation that the system works. We thought that the child is that person, and here is the child being the same person.
Mm-hmm. Now, do Muslims believe in reincarnation?
No. The Muslim idea is that we are to live in this life once. We are created as human beings. We were not animals previous to this. And that after we die, we are not born again in this life, but we remain in a holding pattern until God decides to resurrect us with our bodies, recreating our bodies, such that we stand before Him in judgment. And then, as a result of that judgment, some people will go to live in paradise for eternity. Some people might be put in hell for a temporary period, and some might be put in an intermediary place, which is referred to as the heights.
Mm-hmm. So how do we understand these studies that seem to validate certain religious traditions that are different from our own? I mean, you've discredited this one, but I'm sure there are many other studies that support other religions.
Do you mean in terms of reincarnation specifically?
In terms of any sort of belief system or practice?
Well, naturally people try to find some support for what they believe. But if we are to be fair with the beliefs, to prove the existence of the life hereafter is not possible in the same way as we might prove some scientific precepts, because scientific precepts are studied very carefully in laboratories, and we are dealing with physical things that we can all, in an objective way, examine in the same manner. When we speak about the life hereafter, about the existence of the human soul, and about God, we're talking about things which are metaphysical. They cannot be studied at the physical level. So to a large degree, we just put our faith in these things. But if we ask about some of the beliefs, then some of the beliefs do not seem to be rather logical. And in this case, we find that Islam is very coherent. It makes sense from beginning to end, and its beliefs are quite reasonable.
All right, thank you for that, Brother
You're welcome.
That's all the time we have. For updates and additional information, please visit our website, www.quranspeaks.com, and write to us, because your comments and questions help guide the show. I'm Sophia Ali. For all of us here at Let the Quran Speak, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.